As much as I like Mickey Hart, let's just cut to the chase here. Not every day you've got Jan Lampbrecht on the line and talking about interesting things. Okay, so where were we on this incredibly huge and fascinating subject? I can't even remember. There's so much going on here. Are you aware of this? I think he was a Jesuit named Anatanius Kircher, and he was let into the Vatican Library in about maybe 1650 or so, maybe earlier even, maybe late 1500s. I'm not sure. And he read. You know, the Vatican scooped up all the good books and burned all the rest, and he got to read everything in there. When he got out, he wrote a book, which is a very difficult book to find, and it's called Mundus Subterraneus. And he said this was the encapsulation of all the secret books in the Vatican. And it's this incredible book about the hollow earth and all these tunnels and things leading in, and how it was the duty of all good Catholics to plug up the tunnel openings.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Never heard of
that. I got a hold of this book about 20 years ago, and it's in Latin, so I had to struggle through it. But it was hair-raising.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and also it was very similar in some ways to The Coming Race. So I thought maybe possibly that, was it Bulwer Lytton, I think his name, who wrote The Coming Race? I think he may have gotten a hold of this book and then wrote that book based on it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
You see,
it's very interesting.
The one thing that I also came across was that this subject had been discussed for centuries. And the original father of the idea, who came up with this hole at the poles idea, was actually Sir Edmund Halley.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like you, I also don't take the idea of the hole at the pole seriously anymore. But as part of that book, I was digging into every NASA photograph that I could get. And I bought NASA photographs, and I looked at them, and I put them in the book, and I tried to make sense of them. And it was a very fascinating exercise. I learned a lot from that. I had a mathematician who helped me to analyze some of the things on those photographs. And but the Arctic stuff interested me the most. That ended up becoming the things that drew me a great deal, the mysteries of things that might be in the Arctic, notably Bradley Land and Crocker Land. On my website and in my book, there is a photograph of Bradley Land, and Bradley Land does not exist. It's as far as science and official knowledge is concerned, Bradley Land does not exist. But there is a photograph of it, and it was taken by Dr. Cook. And Dr. Cook was a fascinating person, and I wrote some unique things about Dr. Cook that I discovered at the time that are largely unknown to the public. There is a society that deals with what he discovered and so forth. It's called the Cook Society, and they put out very good journal and reports, and they've done studies on what he came up with. The polar regions was a very fascinating place about a century ago. It was sort of leading edge science. And the other thing I discovered that retains an interest with me to this day has to do with natural nuclear reactions. And I made contact with a scientist called Dr. Marvin Herndon, who wrote about the idea that nuclear reactions occur inside planets. Because as far as astronomers are concerned, nuclear reactions only occur inside stars. But Dr. Herndon wrote a lot of papers that have been published in science journals about the subject. The subject originally came up in the 1940s, at the time that nuclear science was taking off. In the 40s and 50s, there were nuclear scientists who realized that nuclear reactions can actually take place anywhere. And when you read the book, you'll understand the importance of nuclear reactions and hollow planets. And Dr. Herndon's papers were, I discovered his writings and journals right at the very end when I was finishing off Hollow Planet. And I threw it in as a sort of a stop press section. And since then, I've kept in touch with Dr. Herndon, and he's got a website called nuclearearth.com. And he still writes about nuclear reactions, which are not accepted broadly by science in America, but there have been Indian scientists and scientists in other parts of the world who've been publishing his papers. And he still continues on with this idea, elaborating on it, and it's a very, very powerful idea. It's an idea that's so profound. I won't say it's going to prove that anything is hollow. In fact, Dr. Herndon doesn't believe that anything is hollow, but this idea is so profound that it could easily result in the rewriting of most of physics and astronomy as we know it.
And is he saying there's a star at the center of the Earth?
Yes, that's exactly what he's saying. He's not saying it quite as a star, but he's saying that, I think in one of his papers he said that there's a physical nuclear reactor that's about 16 miles in diameter, and it's at the core of the Earth. And this nuclear reactor is the thing that is causing the heat that is driving the Earth, because as you know, the Earth is still, there is heat coming out from the Earth. Now, the idea of the nuclear reaction became of interest to me because when I started looking at this, I used to love astronomy, and astronomy was my hobby at one time. And you will discover that scientists will tell you that planets like that planets like Jupiter give off twice as much heat as they receive from the sun. And so the question then becomes, where does this heat come from? And there's a lot of heat being generated by planets. And what Herndon did was he actually, his tutor was actually, I think, I can't remember the guy's name, but his tutor was actually a guy who won a Nobel Prize in physics. And he started doing the calculations and saying that, there is evidence for this.
Well,
but
that's incredibly interesting. We're going to come back to that, Jan Lampbrecht. Great talk. This is great. We'll be right back talking about hollow worlds and things like that. I'm Jay Weidner, and you keep listening because it's getting good here. We'll be right back.